Goldberg ended Bret Hart's career by being super unsafe. Kicked him in the head and speared him and gave him massive CTE. Goldberg is klutzy and uncool and just a spearing, kicking fool. Bret got retired and Goldberg didn't apologize forever. Oh boy, where to start with this one? Well, first, I'm John Rant with the Retro View, WCW Starrcade 1999, and oh boy, this event. Vince Russo booking WCW to the point that nobody really was going to take any of this goddamn seriously. WCW had been spiraling out of control for quite a while. Yes, the Finger Poke of Doom was almost a year before this, and even before that, WCW was showing fractures, but if you thought that Starrcade 99 was going to be the worst, just the bottom of the barrel, oh no, things got so much worse in 2000. I'm going to go over some of the facts and figures of the Starrcade events and tell you where really things bottomed out. It was Starrcade 2000, the last Starrcade before WCW was just put on the goddamn, garage sale floor. Like, just buy it. Somebody buy it. Somebody goddamn buy it. Oh, Bischoff's group wants to buy it. Cool, here's a bunch of money that we're going to get, but we're not going to give you the TV time. And oh boy. The thing is, that main event, and I'm just going to say right now, Goldberg did not intentionally try to hurt Bret. I'm not saying that. But numerous people spoke out about how Goldberg, taking himself really seriously was one thing, but he never learned how to work. They shoved him out of the power plant way before he was ready. But Bret wanted to teach him. Bret even said, Goldberg, all you have to do, Bill, don't hurt me. Just don't hurt me. And what did he do? He fucking hurt him. And he hurt him well before that goddamn kick. He was hurting him by dropping him everywhere. He hurt him by not catching his foot on the figure 4 spot. To be fair, there should have been a referee outside also. But yeah, that sidekick and a whole bunch of stuff, and my God, I will never forgive Goldberg for doing that. And Goldberg, that's not the only person Goldberg injured. Yes, that biography where he admitted that wrestling was a job to him, and he was taken seriously, and he made everything seem real because he was really hitting people. He's also really giving himself massive CTE, headbutting those locker room doors or those, office doors, whatever. He didn't give a shit. He would just do that. So no wonder he was braining other people because he was giving himself CTE every time he goddamn did that. That being said, the MCI Center, Washington, D.C., third straight Starrcade to take place, and then the following year would also be at the MCI Center. And let me tell you right now, if you thought they drew a healthy crowd for this, they did not. 8,500 fans and 145,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, that may not actually seem as bad considering how bad WCW is doing, but if you take a look at the fact that the previous year's Starrcade did about twice the number of fans and a lot more pay-per-view buys, it is astonishing. Now, Super Brawl 9 actually did really goddamn well, 400-something thousand pay-per-view buys. I believe even Halloween Havoc 99 did around 200,000 pay-per-view buys. I did retro view that recently, and that was a whole lot of fun. But it's the battle to end the millennium. And boy, they went out with a goddamn whimper. The sad thing is even the Nitro and the Thunder somehow managed to make things worse. Bret suffered a major concussion that would end his career, and Goldberg would put his hand through a goddamn limousine window because Goldberg was an idiot. So, let's look at the facts and figures of, pay-per-view buys also, fan attendance, and buildings. Shout out to WrestleNomics for compiling these buy rates and everything. They're great to check out. And if you can subscribe to their Patreon to support them for all the hard work they do now, it would be great. 1987 Starrcade, 8,000 fans, 20,000 pay-per-view buys, UIC Pavilion in Chicago, not the Rosemont Horizon. The reason it was only 20,000, you're thinking Jim Crockett Promotions, so it should have been big. They moved Starrcade out of Greensboro in Atlanta and put it in Chicago. They needed to be in a big media center, and they only got 8,000 fans when they could have closed-circuited and done great things. And also, Vince McMahon created Survivor Series to not mess with Jim Crockett Promotions and said, you carry his pay-per-view, you won't get WrestleMania 4. And they didn't realize Vince would have been shooting himself in the goddamn foot like Plexico Burris did so many goddamn years later. That's a goddamn dated reference. That being said, They bought into his bullshit, and not many cable companies carried it. And then we got to the Bunkhouse Stampede. Then Great American Bash. Turner said, oh, fuck it, we're going to get them more clearance because we're big media people. Yeah, so 20,000 pay-per-view buy, and let's be honest, Starrcade 87, while pretty good, also had some questionable stuff, not giving the tag titles to the Road Warriors. But then we get to 1988, 10,000 fans in the Norfolk Scope, 150,000 pay-per-view buys. Okay, healthy. Turner had just bought the goddamn company. That's fine, even if things are getting nuked on a television and house show level. 10,000 in the Scope, even though the Scope holds a lot more people. And then we get to 1989, after George Scott had put them in the Superdome for Clash of Champions 6? I think it's 6. I think it was 5 or 6. It was 5. Whole point is, he got them there in the Superdome, or they got into the Superdome, and George Scott decided to book the goddamn thing as far as television and house shows and everything, and I understand they were, a television company and had to do both. Yeah, he basically just made it where nobody was at the Superdome. I think it was like 5,000 to 6,000 people. Look at the attendance for the Superdome. It is significantly more than that. It's about 10 times 6,000. I believe it's about 60,000, 70,000 if you really jam them in tightly. But 1989's 1989 Starrcade, this is when Jim Herd was in full control of the company. Fucking goddamn idiot. 10,000 fans in the Omni in Atlanta, but 130,000 pay-per-view buys because, yeah, I don't think the Future Shocker tournament did all that good. 1990s Starrcade. Jim Herd still in control. The Black Scorpion. Sting, it's a Black Scorpion. Good old Ole Anderson. But yeah, they were in the Kiel Auditorium. That's in St. Louis. That's where at least Sam Muchnick used to run some of his big shows for St. Louis Wrestling. 7,200 fans. The Kiel Auditorium holds about 14,000, or did. It's been torn down for years. It was built in like the 30s or 40s, so it was an old building. And actually was shut down soon after this particular event. So I'm just going to blame Jim Herd for killing the Kiel Auditorium. So how dare you, Jim Herd? How dare you still be living now like Jim Herd's going to be watching this? 165,000 pay-per-view buys, so okay. Better than 1988. 1991, Battle Bowl, the Queefle Lottery. 9,000 fans at the Scope. Okay, better than what they did in the Kiel Auditorium. 155,000 pay-per-view buys. All right. Not great, but better than they did for 1989. But then they really started to head downhill because we got to 1992. We got to 8,000 fans at the Omni in Atlanta. The Omni held a lot more than that, 16, 17, maybe 18,000. The Omni's been torn down for a while. It was actually a pretty cool venue. But yeah, 8,000 fans, 95,000 pay-per-view buys. Don't worry. No Starrcade event would ever go below 100,000 pay-per-view buys. I promise you. So, yeah, even though Bill Watts had taken over and had said, oh, we got the Omni back up and other stuff like that. And no, you didn't, Bill. No, you didn't. You did some good stuff, and then you also basically pissed people off because you hated Jewish people. That's the reason why Heyman left. I guarantee if it wasn't Watts, it was somebody. There was somebody very high up, and yeah, Watts and Heyman didn't get along. I wonder why. 1993, 8,200 fans, 115,000 pay-per-view buys for Flair versus Vader. It was supposed to be Sid versus Vader before Sid decided to scissor Arn. That didn't go all that well. It's like the Independence Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, that was a pretty big main event, but they got back up over 100,000 buys. But then 1994, don't worry, Hulk Hogan's here to save the day. They got 8,200 fans at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium and 130,000 pay-per-view buys. I blame Brutus Beefcake being in the main event. Then again, I will blame Brutus Beefcake, Honky Tonk Man, and pretty much any of Hogan's cronies, even though I think Honky Tonk Man actually wasn't on that card because he didn't want to put over Johnny B. Bad. Whole point is, okay, at least they got 8,200 fans in the Nashville Municipal Auditorium, which actually was pretty healthy. How much they had to pay for, who knows. But 1995 was better with 8,200 fans in the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. And they literally did 75,000 pay-per-view buys. Ouch. Ouch. I mean, how? How did they do that? Well, don't worry. 1996 was better. 9,000 fans in the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. 345,000 pay-per-view buys for Piper versus Hogan and others. And also the NWO helped. 1997, 17,500 fans, even though I think, if I recall in the broadcast, somebody on commentary, possibly Shivani, said 24,000 fans. I don't think the MCI Center holds that many, unless you're counting all the staff. 700,000 buys, and they got to witness Sting get pinned clean by Hogan, and yeah, all that shit went just completely goddamn south. 1998, 16,000 fans, just barely over 460,000 pay-per-view buys at the MCI Center, and Goldberg's streak got broken. And it was cool that Nash won, and he went nowhere. 2000, by the way, went about 2,000 down from 1999. 6,500 fans, 6,596, so pretty much like down 2,000. Who knows how many they had to paper. 50,000 pay-per-view buys. So yeah, they were toast. I think that was actually what Greed ended up doing. That was the last pay-per-view that WCW held. Nevertheless, yeah, Russo's last pay-per-view before he was sent home. He was sent home and then came back at just before Spring Stampede 2004. Yeah, the reboot. You know, in hindsight, if I had really wanted to torture myself, I should have watched from Road Wild 99 and watched all the television after that, or at least from Fall Brawl 99, after Bischoff got sent home, all the way to the end of, WCW as a whole. I am not going to go back and revisit that stuff. I've watched the pay-per-views, I've watched enough of the television, and I watched almost an entire year of Nitro, Thunder, and pay-per-views, and my brain melted several thousand goddamn times. Thank you, Russo, you fucking cancer. So, we open with Scott Hudson doing some opening narration, and with Jim Duggan as a janitor. No, really, they had Jim Duggan as a janitor. I believe Jim Duggan actually battled through cancer once and then came back, and this is how they repaid him. So then we go to another package. No, really, we went from one package to another package, and this was a 2 hour and 43-minute program on the cock. And yeah, WCW is toast. I mean, I forgot that Bobby Heenan actually was calling this goddamn thing. I actually thought that Heenan was done after Halloween Havoc 99, but I guess not. I know that I just remember that they included Mark Madden on some of these goddamn things, and it was ridiculous, because Madden should have never been included on any of these shows. But Shivani, Heenan, and Scott Hudson on commentary, and I think Scott Hudson gets a bad rap. I didn't mind Scott Hudson. I at least appreciate that he brought enthusiasm and tried to make the most sense of this bullshit. Speaking of bullshit, the Mamalukes with Tony Marinara, who was Tony Mamaluke in ECW. The little spindly guy, who I'm sure is a nice guy, but he also was about as big around as a crimped garden hose. Big Vito and Johnny the Bull. Remember when they put Vito in a dress in WWE? Remember when Johnny the Bull was in wrestling? I don't remember how long he was. He could hit some impressive stuff, and that's all as far as leg drops and everything. He would also injure his tailbone a lot because he was landing flush. They took on Disco Fever, and Lash LaRue. Okay, because I did the bad Disco Inferno thing, that's all you're going to get. The fans were more concerned, seemingly, with just having a good time and partying, and I would imagine a lot of free tickets were given out. Like, really? I cannot imagine that many people legit bought tickets to this without getting 2-for-1 specials. The building, the entire upper deck was all empty. And, I mean, there were pockets of empty seats there. What they should have done is they should have brought everybody in and just shot it well. It still wouldn't have helped the goddamn booking of the show, but it would have at least made it look better. The heels dominated most of this. Lash LaRue wasn't awful in the ring, but he wasn't great. There was, Johnny the Bull does a leg drop, an impressive springboard leg drop that misses. They do a slow 2 count because, oh shit, the refs, or the other guy's out of position. I think it was Vito. And then he did this thing where Disco tried to hit, I believe, Vito with the last dance, but then they ended up doing a do-si-do thing, and Lash LaRue got pushed into Disco, and Disco thought it was somebody else, even though Vito didn't have hair and Johnny the Bull had a hat. So you would have thought he would have recognized the Kush ball on top of Lash LaRue's head, but it hits the last dance, the stunner anyway. The worst stunner going, by the way. And then the heels end up winning. Disco apparently owed the Italians money, so Tony Marinara had a briefcase with a body bag and a thing of ether, and they soaked him, and then they put him in a body bag and put him in the trunk. Well, actually, they took him out of the body bag and then put him in the trunk of a car. This is all in the first match, by the way. We still got 12 other matches. And then, so basically, Scott Hall isn't going to be at the show. He had to relinquish the U.S. Championship. By the way, Scott Hall was also the TV champion at the time after beating Rick Steiner, threw the title in the trash, and Duggan found the title in the trash, and that's what they thought of the once prestigious TV championship. This is all stuff that happened around this time. And Benoit cuts a promo, kinda. One thing Benoit could never do is cut promos. I mean, he could cut necks. That's all I'm going to say right there. I want to face somebody. I want to earn this championship. We're going to have a ladder match. You're gonna have to, climb over the crippler. And then Medusa took on Evan Courageous with Spice in his corner. I remember Spice. Spice still looks good now. Spice was my favorite Nitro girl. It's a WCW Cruiserweight Championship match. No, really, they're having a woman. As tough as Medusa is, still a woman competing for the Cruiserweight title. And Evan had cheated on Medusa with Spice. I mean, both are beautiful women, but I mean, let's be honest. Like I'm going to cast aspersions on, sleeping around. Nevertheless, this was uncomfortable because it's a man hitting a woman. I'm sorry, I still find that uncomfortable. I just do. And Evan laid the shit in. I'll say that much. And Medusa could take the hard bumps. Remember when Medusa retired about 2.5 years before this, or close to it, and then was doing monster truck stuff, but they still had her under contract or something. They would just keep bringing her back here and there. There were boring chants, and then Spice got involved, hit a low blow. This was after Evan Courageous nearly got dropped on his head in a powerbomb attempt. And then Spice hit a low blow, kinda, and then Medusa got the victory. Medusa's the new Cruiserweight champion. And it would only get worse from there, folks. Medusa, legit, talented, deserved championships. But this was bad, and it would only get worse with the involvement of Oklahoma. Don't worry, I'll get to that. Yeah, men always, men, or it's like women always set up men and men fall for it is something that Heenan said. Norman Smiley took on Ming, and Ming basically was just saying, oh, well, this is fucking stupid for the hardcore title. I'm going to throw everything at Norman. Norman's going to scream. We're going to go backstage. Brian Knobbs and Fit Finley. Fit Finley, who had a legit leg injury after that junkyard match at, I believe, Bash at the Beach 99, I think. Don't ask. That ended up going totally tits up, and Finn actually retired for a number of years and trained some women, including Trish and Lita. One of those took to the train a lot easier than the others. Anyway, Ming just started throwing shit, and they went backstage, and then Norman kept screaming and jumped over into some curtains, and then Finley and Brian Knobbs showed up, and this was a mess. This was terrible. And pouring hot coffee on him, like Ming's going to sell that. And then they hit him with everything, and Ming finally says, fine, I'm done with this, and just lays down. And Norman barely covers him and then runs off. And screaming Norman, look, Norman Smiley, his run in WCW, the man deserves a lot of respect. At least he tried to make the most of this, but damn, no wonder Ming left just over a year after this. Right after Sin 2001, he was a hardcore champion, then showed up at the Royal Rumble 2001 while still the hardcore champion, because who's going to tell Ming no? I'm not. I prefer to live. And let's just blitz through more of this. David Flair was caressing a crowbar. No, Devon Storm was not there yet, or at least not on the show. Oklahoma, where the winds come sweeping down the plains, and here Dr. Dusty Williams goes. And then the Misfits, who were in Vampiro's group, kidnap him and put him in a cage. And then Jim Duggan is all fired up, says he has 3 mystery partners. It's the Revolution, Shane Douglas, Dean Malenko, Saturn, and Asia with a Y, because we're not ripping off WWE. Duggan teamed up with the Varsity Club. No, the actual Varsity Club. Mike Rotunda, who hadn't wrestled in a bit. Kevin Sullivan, who hadn't wrestled in about 2.5 years. And Rick Steiner, who was waiting for a bus. If Duggan lost, he'd have to renounce his U.S. citizenship because Shane Douglas hated America for some reason. I remember watching the TV, and I still can't really recall the reason, but they had a Revolution flag. And Shane Douglas wasn't in part of this match because he had an elbow injury because he was an unsafe idiot, and also knocked Bill Clinton, talking about his impeachment and all that stuff. I wonder what Shane Douglas would have said a number of years later with another impeachment. But Shane Douglas, if you read up on him, is a crackpot. Now, a hell of a promo, but a crackpot. That being said, the entrances and the promos from Shane and Duggan were longer than the match. Duggan dominates and then gets beat up a little bit, doesn't tag in his partners, and then eventually they come in and get in a big old schmoz, and then they attack Duggan, and then Shane Douglas comes in because he's injured and covers Duggan 1, 2, 3. That was the whole match. That was the whole match right there. And then, but one line that reminded me of how Kevin Sullivan treats his relationships when he attacked Asia. Look at Sullivan beating a woman. Yeah, Nancy knows. And then Shane yells, "You're going to have to renounce your citizenship tomorrow." Gene Mean, as Chris Jericho once called him, is talking to Vampiro and the Misfits, and then Oklahoma's in the cage. Vampiro took on Dr. Death, and Vampiro would get 5 minutes with Oklahoma if he beat Dr. Death. Okay, so not even an hour into this pay-per-view, we've seen everything and then some. Scott Hudson summarizing Vince Russo's booking without even realizing it. Or maybe with realizing it, because, yeah, we were not even an hour into the pay-per-view at this point. Oklahoma had a live mic and was calling stuff and being fed onto the commentary feed. And you thought Dr. Death and the Brawl for All was sad to watch. This was really sad to watch. And this was a year and a half after that. The ref got shoved and we got a DQ. That was the whole match. There was maybe 5.5 minutes. So because Vampiro won by DQ, Dr. Death beat him up a little bit more. But Vampiro gets a shot at Oklahoma. Oklahoma then, once Vampiro, because he's down, gets in some shots. The Misfits lay into him. I'm going to say right now about Oklahoma, Ed Ferrara, that his parents need to be jailed for giving birth to him, and Ed Ferrara deserved every bit of ridicule that he got when a certain former wrestling manager apparently spit at him, and the spit ran down his face, and Ed did nothing because he's a fucking coward and a lousy goddamn wrestler that couldn't make it, and a lousy writer and a lousy piece of shit that made fun of JR's Bell's palsy. I hope that Ed Ferrara gets the worst type of disease and rots from the inside out, but is just alive enough to where he's a drooling vegetable and knows that nobody could ever appreciate him. And if he was married to somebody, I hope that woman leaves him. If he has children, I hope his children never talk to him again. Making fun of a guy's disease, and all because JR was infinitely better at his worst than Ed Ferrara could ever be at his best. And I didn't buy Vince Russo's apology to JR either, because Vince Russo's on the good Christian thing, which it's all bullshit anyway. But Ed Ferrara, yeah, fuck Ed Ferrara. Fuck him. Fuck his parents for ever giving birth to him. So that being said, it would have been just such a shame if he got dropped on his head and paralyzed. Would have been such a shame. So anyway, yeah, we end up seeing Ed Ferrara all beat up, and then the powers that be are, well, that's Vince Russo. Yells at creative control to park a stand on a chair, and Henning says, yeah, we'll go do this. They're going to go have a match with Harlem Heat and Midnight. Midnight, who was a strong, statuesque woman and had been part of Harlem Heat because Booker and Stevie Ray were having issues, and Stevie didn't want to talk to Midnight. And it was a 6-man tag, or 6-person tag. They put it as a 6-man tag on Wiki, which is kind of unfair to Midnight just because she's statuesque. But Stevie wanted nothing to do with Midnight at all. It's close to Midnight, and he's sick of this creative being leaving him in the dark. So he shows up a little bit later. Midnight was not very good, at all. And I mean at all. But that being said, there's a fly, by the way, and that was actually kind of appropriate that there was a fly in the room. There's a fly in here. So anyway, yeah, Midnight gets beat up for a bit, despite being taller than Kurt Hennig. Also, creative control, having Nazi tattoos. The Harris Boys, yeah, I hope they have the worst goddamn Christmas. So anyway, Stevie argues with Midnight, and during this time, Booker gets pinned. No, really, that's what happens. And then they would actually end up having a battle, Stevie and Booker, and then it would be over the letter T. No, really, that's something that they would do. And that was Kevin Sullivan that came up with that stuff. Kevin Sullivan came up with that. Yeah. Yeah, that was a 6-person tag that went about 8 minutes. And then they show clips of Dustin returning to WCW as 7. I look like Uncle Fester. I mean, it was terrible. It was a terrible look. So Dustin is all fired up, and then Jarrett attacks him, and we get a bunkhouse brawl between these two. And unfortunately, this is not the only time that we see Jeff Jarrett. For whatever reason, WCW felt the reason that their ratings were falling is they didn't have enough Jeff Jarrett on there, so they put more Jeff Jarrett on there. And the buy rates and the ratings kept falling because Jeff Jarrett, for all his flaws, which are many, he's a good wrestler. He's not good for ratings. And, yeah, Jeff Jarrett brought a wheelbarrow, and all the security looked like they were college age, like they literally were freshmen in college. I don't understand it. Cowbell shots. We needed more cowbell, evidently. And Dustin just... God, Dustin did not look healthy at this point at all. Dustin hit a couple low blows, shattered dreams when he was Goldust. During this time, he actually duct taped the referee's arms and mouth. He duct taped the arms to the rope because the referee kept trying to stop him from doing stuff, or because he was just pissed off at the referee. This was stuff that actually happened in the match, by the way, and I guess the referee couldn't call for the bell because, yeah. So, this was terrible. Here's Kurt Hennig. Because evidently we didn't see enough Kurt Hennig earlier. Rest in peace, Kurt Hennig. There was a sleeper hold, and the crowd booed like crazy. Interference. We get some more bullshit going on, and then and they battle to the outside. Jeff Jarrett jumps off a ladder, symbolic of what he's going to be involved in later, and hits a guitar shot and manages to pin Dustin on the floor in a bunkhouse match. 11 and a half minutes for this shit. And then DDP took on David Flair, all because David Flair was stalking Kimberly. Look up how Kimberly looks right now. She looks incredible. She's in her early 50s. David Flair, you know, I almost want to take the challenge of ranking every single David Flair WCW pay-per-view match from worst to best. I almost want to do that because David Flair, it's astonishing just how bad he was. Now, he was shoved out there way too soon. Had no idea what he was doing. Go out and watch him. It was either Sold Out 99 or Super Brawl 99. I think it was Sold Out 99. Just look. He has no idea what he's doing. He is confused. So, yeah, it's a crowbar and a pole match. So you can definitely tell Russo booked this. David attacked DDP before, and then the referee's like, oh, we're not going to continue this. And then Dave Penzer got shoved away. Poor Dave Penzer. David could not do any offense properly. And got the crowbar, but then got hit with a diamond cutter, 1, 2, 3. Got hit with another. And DDP was about to hit him with the crowbar, and then suddenly Daphne showed up and hugged his leg. Could she hug my leg like that? Rest in peace, Daphne. God, Daphne was great. God, she was hot. Poor Daphne. Poor Daphne. Didn't deserve to go the way she did. Nobody deserves that. Yeah, crowbar and a pole match ends with David Flair somehow botching every move he's supposed to do. Good job, David. So, Luger has his ego-stroking entrance. He is now known as a total package. Sting has Liz on his side because Luger was being abusive towards Liz, just on camera, nowhere else. And he says to Liz, hey, leave your pepper spray back here. Take this one that I have. And more on that here in a bit. God, Liz. Oh, God, she was gorgeous. God, she was gorgeous. I wish Liz was still here. Wish we could trade Luger for Liz. So, Sting versus the total package. Sting felt that somebody was going to betray him, so for once he tried to be smart. Tried to be. This match was terrible. Luger couldn't move at this point. Sting ended up getting hit with something, and oh my God, Liz turned on him and then tried to spray him with the pepper spray, the mace, but it was silly string. Yay! So he outsmarted and then yelled at her to get out of the ring. And then she got the bat and hit him. And Luger, it was by DQ actually that Sting won. And then they put the chair on Sting's hand, stomp on it, Luger does, and then hits him with some of the bat shots that honestly are the equivalent of him taking that terrible DDT from Michael Hayes. I believe at Wrestle War 89. I think that was it. My God, Luger could not do anything right. And Luger, at his peak, could actually do some good stuff, but Jesus Christ. God, Liz looked great. Looks so fucking incredible. Yeah, those were some terrible bat shots. Sid versus Nash in a powerbomb match. This was a little bit after Sid said, "You are half the man I am, and I have half the brain that you do." Sid actually said that. Sid said that. I love Sid. Looked great, but God, Sid was weird. Anyway, yeah, this was built up well, kinda, I guess. The crowd woke up briefly, and then the crowd sat right back down when they realized Nash's back was shot, and the referee got bumped. Here's Jarrett, by the way. This is right after Sid had done a powerbomb. Jarrett shows up, hits a guitar shot, gets rid of the evidence. Nash tries to powerbomb Sid twice, can't because of his bad back, and pulls up the ref and says, "Yeah, I did it." And the referee calls for it and awards it to Nash. That was something that actually happened on the pay-per-view. Fuck, I can only imagine how the 145,000 people felt buying this, or 145,000 households. And then Benoit will face someone and says, they'll find out what Silent But Violent is all about. Nancy and Daniel did, and the dogs were still in the enclosed pool area. I mean, if that isn't just symbolic of what Benoit would turn out to be. Vicious, violent murderer that deserves to be ridiculed. Jarrett versus Benoit in a U.S. title ladder match, and there were some hard bumps. It's hard for me to watch a Benoit match objectively. It really is. Benoit was bleeding from the nose, and, I mean, really, like, he was bleeding from the bridge of the nose, so it looked like he got busted up just too damn bad. He was left hanging a couple times, in the match, I mean. Jarrett nearly got his leg snapped when they did a spot and the ladder tipped over. That looked really goddamn bad. And Benoit would end up winning despite taking some hard shots, so he would earn the U.S. Championship. That match is worth checking out if you can stomach Benoit matches, but if you can't, I totally understand. And the Brett promo, I will do everything to make sure that Goldberg doesn't win. I walk out as champion. Brett versus Goldberg, WCW World Heavyweight Championship match. I have talked about this multiple times on other shows. But suffice to say, it had a big fight feel, and you could tell right from the beginning, Goldberg not only didn't know how to wrestle, Brett had to do everything. Brett had to talk to him, guide him through this stuff. They did a lot of spots, and they were doing some good stuff, and then, you know, he dropped him on the announcer table. He dropped him on the guardrail. Okay, it looked like Brett was able to kind of protect himself, but then, you know, he was getting thrown around, and then he had the figure four spot where the referee should have been outside, and Brett hit his goddamn head right on the back of the floor, or right the back of his head on the floor, I mean. The referee wasn't out there because there were 3 referee bumps in this, as opposed to the millions of referee bumps that we had before. Too many referee bumps. And yeah, Goldberg didn't really hold his foot there. He should have, you know, tried to hold Brett's foot so he could get, footing, ironically, but didn't. Now, whether that would have ended up helping Brett not hit his head on the, back of his head on the floor, I don't know. The referee should have been there. They should have done something. You should have had a ring crew person, security, whatever it is. But then we get the spear, we get the kick, the side kick that ended Brett's career. And we get all this. We get Brett putting on the sharpshooter. Piper has come out, and Piper just calls for the bell. Is this Montreal over again? And they did that. Brett's concussed, has no idea what's going on. This is what they goddamn did. This is what they did to end the millennium on pay-per-view. No wonder this company was out of business in just over a goddamn year. And Brett's career was over. He would wrestle a few more times, but his career was over. Thanks, Goldberg, you klutzy, spearing fuck. God, I love Brett. Agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.